Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's Last Post ceremony. My name is Emily Hiles, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraft woman Laura Chaffer. This evening, we're honoured to acknowledge Major General Dato' Zaidan, Assistant Chief of Staff, Defence Operation and Training, Malaysian Armed Forces, and his accompanying delegation. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and the families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Returned and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Club Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the pool of reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the national anthem. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where family and friends could mourn loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved. And here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we will read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first, we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths and floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the pool of reflection.
Today we remember and pay tribute to Private Sidney Hunt Chapman. Sidney Hunt Chapman was born on the 25th of April 1895 in Southampton, England. The third son born to Arthur and Mary Chapman, he attended school in London where he became known as a strong swimmer. In 1913, he moved with his parents to Port Adelaide in South Australia, where he worked as a plumber. In June 1915, Chapman volunteered for service in the Australian Imperial Force. Aged 20, he sought and received his father's written permission in order to be allowed to serve overseas. Chapman trained at the army camp at Keswick before embarking on the transport ship Ballarat in September 1915. By coincidence, this ship had brought his family to Australia when they had migrated 2 years earlier. Arriving in Egypt, Chapman continued his training in the large army camps there. Soon after he arrived, he became ill with pleurisy and spent time in hospital with a high fever. In February 1916, he joined his unit, the 10th Battalion, and continued training. At the end of March, his unit travelled to southern France, where they caught trains north to the Somme sector of the Western Front. Chapman's respiratory problems continued throughout 1916. In June, he contracted bronchitis and was evacuated to England for treatment in hospital. He returned to the 10th Battalion in early October, but in November fell sick again. He was treated for influenza and bronchitis in hospital in France. On recovering, he rejoined the battalion in mid-December. The battalion spent the winter in the Somme sector of France. In early 1917, British commanders discovered that German forces had strategically withdrawn to a fortified line that the British termed the Hindenburg Line. Hoping to break through the line, the British mounted a number of attacks. The 10th Battalion was involved in the attacks on the German-occupied village of Bullecourt. In April, the battalion spent time in the front lines during the unsuccessful first attempt to capture the village. In May, the battalion participated in the second attempt. During the fighting on the 6th of May, Chapman was struck by enemy fire and badly wounded. He was evacuated to a nearby casualty clearing station where he remained before dying of his wounds on the 12th of May, 1917. He was 22 years old. Sidney Chapman is buried in Grevillers British Cemetery in northern France, alongside more than 2,000 Commonwealth servicemen of the First World War. His father based the headstone inscription on a line from a poem by Rudyard Kipling, "Who dies if England lives?" One of Sidney Chapman's cousins also served in the Australian Imperial Force. Private Harold Chapman served with the 11th Battalion and was killed on Gallipoli in May 1915. A newspaper report states that 2 of Chapman's brothers were also serving at the front. Their identities are unknown, but given the family's history, it is possible that they served with the English units rather than the AIF. Private Sidney Hunt Chapman is listed on the Roll of Honour on my right, among almost 62,000 Australians who died while serving in the First World War. His photograph is displayed today by the Pool of Reflection. This is but one of many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Private Sidney Hunt Chapman, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
Please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old, for we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. In the going down of the sun and in the morning, we will remember them.
We will remember them. lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Pozières or in the low scrub at Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of our director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today and for your continued support of the Memorial's development project. We wish you all a very pleasant evening.